Ladies and gentlemen, it's really indeed my pleasure. I'm not going to use this, I'll just say. A few months ago, Pampush stopped by in my house. That's Anjali's husband, in case you don't know. And he brought me a book. And that book was written by this young man. And I picked up at somebody's house. Whose house was that? I went to pick
My
up.
house.
Thank you.
Yes.
And please turn your phone off.
So I went to her house to pick up the book. But I must say I was very tempted to stay there because she was making those aloo parantha. And she asked me only 2 times. So if she had asked me one more time, I would have stayed there.
Next time.
But needless to say, I brought that book, and I do read a lot. And in fact, one of the books that you mentioned this afternoon, The Curfew Night, I read that also about 7 or 8 months ago. And then I called him actually also. Bashar. So he didn't return my call, but I did call him. And I must say that I finished that book in one go. And one of the reasons being coming from Jammu, I could identify many of the things that he was talking about, many of the people that he was mentioning, many of the places that he had mentioned. And some of those camps actually I had also visited some years ago myself in Jammu. And so one thing I can say about him is he's very expressive. Being academia, we also write our books, so we are so boring. But his story was very, very expressive. And especially when he personalizes that with the stories of his mother, especially her Jewry and what she was going through, and his brother and the rest of his family. So I would really urge you that even if you're not interested in Kashmir, but if you like to read a good book, I would really recommend you to read this. And I can promise you that if you would also, like me, probably would finish that in one go. And by one go, I meant that I started like 4 o'clock. Around 6 o'clock, I had 2 glasses of wine. 8 o'clock, normally I go to bed. And next morning, I got up 8 o'clock, and by noontime, I had finished this book. So please, and you can all see his bio. It's a very impressive bio. He has won many awards. But I was very proud of him. So do I get a hug before you start? Give me a hug. Oh. Okay, so please give him a special welcome. This lady here.
I'm here. She's following our seeds.
Now this is all because of her.
Yeah.
And you want tell us what happened yesterday that you had to tow your car.
We have to talk about that.
Tell us that story.
Oh my God. Well, we were in Houston. No, you're not talking about it. We were in Houston for an event for Rahul. We had a party similar to this at Houston. And yesterday was Diwali, which for those of you that don't know what it is, it's a festival of lights. And that was yesterday. So the plan was to be here by 2 and then get ready for a dinner with family, some of my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, nephew by marriage. They're here. So we get together for Diwali. And I locked the keys of my car in the trunk. Just, chatting. We were like literally ready to drive off. And long story short, we had to get the car towed because all our luggage was in the trunk. We had to get it towed from Houston to Austin. And poor Surinder, where's Surinder?
And somebody has to drive
He had
here.
to drive us down, and then he drove back to Houston. And he got there at 9 o'clock at night. So it's been a fun.
And on the top of that,
weekend.
she was sending the email at 2 o'clock in the morning. I did see that. Yeah. And then she was bothering the people at the LBJ at 3 o'clock in the morning. I did see that. Give her a big hand also, please. Okay, it's all yours.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real honor to be speaking here, and I thank all my friends. Anjali and her husband, I know Pampush for some time, and he's been like a brother to me. And between the two of them, she from America and he from New Delhi, where he has been for the last many months. They sort of coordinated this entire trip. Now it's a different thing that this trip has been really tiring because I've been hopping from one time zone to another in these packing as many events in the last 15 days. And I was at Houston just day before yesterday, and someone asked me where I've come from. for about 30 seconds I just went blank, and I could not tell him that I landed from California because every second day I've been taking flights from New York, Michigan, DC.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Before I met him personally in Houston, we had just met on Skype. And the first thing he says to me when he meets me in Houston is, "I'm going to sue your husband." So, on that note, he started the rest of the trip. No wonder I lost my keys in the car.
Well, he's only picking up American habits.
There you go.
Well, it's catching up fast in India as well. So, so this is what do I talk about Kashmir? Most of you know about it. Some of you have been through the trauma and exile, the suffering of the 1990. So it's like preaching to the converted. But those of you who do not know, this is the book I wrote in. It came out in January this year. This is essentially a memoir of growing up as a religious minority in this North Indian state of Kashmir, from where I come from and Anjali come from, and many others in this room today, in this house today, come from. I was 14 years old when we were forced out of our home and driven into exile. But back then we did not know that this exile would last for so long. It's been 23 years. I was just 14 and we had no idea what was happening. And this is not for the first time that we have had to suffer this. In 1947, when India attained independence and India became India and Pakistan, my mother's family, they come from this North Kashmir province of Baramulla. And in 1947, when the neighboring country, Pakistan, sent its tribesmen from the western frontier province, aided by Pakistani army regulars, to attack Kashmir for the first time, which later became a war between India and Pakistan. They came, they entered, and they vandalized and burned down village after village for days altogether. And in that process, the house my maternal grandfather had built very lovingly in this province was burned down to ashes. So for the first time in 1947, my mother's family became refugees. They came to the summer capital of Jammu and Kashmir, which is a place called Srinagar. So they had to come to Srinagar and stay in a refugee camp put up by the government of India at that point of time. So that was the time when they became refugees in their own state. So by the virtue of being a religious minority in Kashmir, we have faced these exiles many times. There have been 7 recorded histories of the exile of our community from Kashmir. As the legend goes, there was a time when only 11 Kashmiri Pandit families were left in Kashmir. But then, we returned, and that is how we spread ourselves in Kashmir. So 1947, everything lost. My parents met again in the 60s. They married in late 60s and built this house lovingly again in a Srinagar suburb in the early 70s, and that is the house where I was born. And no, like most of Kashmiris, we came from a middle class background, and in Kashmir, a middle class family, irrespective of whether you're a Kashmiri Muslim or a Hindu, we put everything that we have in our house, because house becomes the focus of our existence. It is our identity. So everything my parents had was put into this house, which, like I say in my book, was built by my father's pension funds and my mother's bridal jewelry. So gradually, one day some pillars would be put up, the other day a corridor would be created. Some other day, furniture would be ordered as and when they got some savings. And we never dreamt, and I was born in that house, and we never dreamt that one day, we'll have to leave that house also. And that is what happened to us in the autumn of 1989 or the winter of 1990, when about the whole community, about 350,000 people, or 400,000 people roughly, about 75,000 families, were forced into exile one sudden day. I've been talking about it a lot, and I'll mention it again briefly. The events of January 1990. That is the time when the exodus really began, particularly on one night on January 1990, which became in many ways the longest night of our lives. When hundreds of thousands of people came out on the streets against us, and we were really scared. And that is one major event that sort of forced us into exile. And when we went to exile a couple of months, from 20th January onwards, from next day onwards, the exile really began, and it lasted for a few months. All of us had hope, and we did not want to part away with those hopes, with that hope. So someone, we would hear this every day that person A has died, but person A, we did not know him, so we thought we'd be fine. But the next day we would hear that person B has died. We did not know him, so we thought we will be fine. But then when the tragedy struck close home, when someone we really knew, a father's colleague or mother's colleague or a neighbor or a friend or a relative, that is when the enormity of the tragedy struck us, and then every family left, and all of us left in such a hurry that we could not tell anyone what had happened. A cousin could not tell his cousin that he had to leave, and one fine morning you would go visit a friend or a neighbor or a relative, and you would find the house locked because the person had left in a hurry because of something or the other. And that is the first summer when we had to face the first real Indian summer, because we came from a climate which is like the New England, and we had to sort of for reference sake, we had to come to Texas. And come to Texas in a place where we had to live in a torn tent, where we did not even have access to a table fan. So in the heart of Jammu city, there used to be this temple complex where all of us would assemble every evening to assess what had happened to us. The enormity of tragedy really struck us there. I'm just going to read a brief passage from my book describing the events of those times and the situation in this place, in this temple complex, which was called Gita Bhavan, in the heart of Jammu city. In the evenings, we would go to the Gita Bhavan temple in the heart of old Jammu. It was there that the enormity of our tragedy, of our exile in our own country struck us. The Bhavan had a large central courtyard. Portions of the building had been taken over by families who had nowhere else to go. Rags or saris or blankets or even bed sheets had been hung up to create small private spaces. We would all flock to the Bhavan to find out about the welfare of other families. Neighbors met neighbors, brothers met brothers, colleagues met colleagues, and in that courtyard, they took stock of the catastrophe that had befallen them. Trat Hasape was the common refrain those days. Lightning had struck us. Some smoked cigarette after cigarette. Women walked to the storage tank to collect water. Everything looked like a nightmare, including the unreliable water supply. Old women wearing their traditional ferens in that heat cooled themselves with bamboo hand fans. It was at the Bhavan that the fate of others became evident to us. Stories of what had happened in Anantnag, in Sopore, in Baramulla, in Badgam, in Kupwara. These are the names of the places in Kashmir Valley. In Handwara, a massive crowd had spilled out on the streets on January 25, and the people carried axes and knives and iron rods. Some of them wore shrouds. The procession was in response to an announcement that had been made the night before. We have achieved freedom, and tomorrow we'll all come out and celebrate in the main market square. The crowd passed through Pandit localities. Take out your Kalashnikovs. Let us finish them, shouted one. At Safakadal, which is another place in downtown Srinagar, the fleeing Pandit families were showered with coins and candy to tell them that they were already dead. Now, this is a local custom in Kashmir where candy and coins are thrown at someone who is dead and is being taken for last rites. The mob had shouted, Ram Nam Sat Hai, Aakha Kis Pat Hai, which means Ram's Nam is truth. Pandits are leaving one after another. At Portiar, an elderly Pandit saw a young man being brought to the steps leading to the Jhelum river. He was being held by his hands and feet. His head was repeatedly banged on a stone step till blood flowed from his nose and mouth. Those who escaped were on the streets now. We had lost everything, home, hearth, and all our worldly possessions, which had taken generations to build. Everyone mourned over the loss of this or that. An elderly woman known to my mother sat on the steps leading to a small temple, shedding silent tears. Her great-grandmother had passed on some pashmina and shatu shawls to her. She had kept them safe for decades, mothballed for protection, to pass on to the next generation, divided equally between her daughter and her prospective daughter-in-law when the time came. And now they were all lost, left behind in the wilderness of Baramulla. I wish I could call my neighbor and request her to keep them safe, she said. Don't be silly, her husband snapped. Don't you realize what your friend has done to us? He turned to my father and told him what had happened. They were planning to take their possessions with them to Jammu. The man had spoken to a transport company and they had promised to send a mini load carrier. As they waited, a few men arrived, banging at their door. Then they kicked the door in. They entered menacingly as the old couple cowered in a corner. Pandit, I believe you want to leave. Balai dafa. Good riddance. Leave, but you cannot take anything with you. So the mini load carrier was of no use. The family came to Jammu empty-handed, thankful that they had been allowed to leave unharmed. The old men said, I'm sure the neighbors knew by now they would have taken all your shawls. The woman looked crestfallen, and I think her husband immediately regretted what he had said to her with such certainty. Sometimes it is best to leave things ambiguous, suspended, so that some hope remains. I think it was on those steps that the woman lost her will to live. A few months later, she died in a one-room dwelling. Hundreds of thousands of people, ladies and gentlemen, stuck for the first time in the dusty Indian plains, nowhere to go, no one to look up to, no government in sight. Strangers. There were cases when these relief vans would come to the refugee center, and there were so people and the relief was so little. There was this one incident I remember when a van came, and I was there when it came. I was visiting a friend in the refugee camp who went with me to the school. And this mini load carrier came. It was carrying tomatoes to be distributed among the refugees. And they started giving 10, 12 tomatoes to each person, but the line was much longer than their supply. So they started giving one tomato each. But the line was still there and they were falling short of tomatoes. So they cut the tomato in two halves and started giving one half of the tomato to every person who stood in that line. So in 1990, we lost everything we had, our dignity especially. We did not know what was happening to us. And my family, because we had left everything and we had to leave one morning, my family had to sleep on newspaper sheets for weeks in a small hotel of sorts. And I remember one particular incident. We used to stay in this marriage hall where marriages take place. People rent out those properties to sort of get their children married, etc. And we were in our room. It was one room where we had our kitchen. We used to live there, sleep there, study there. My sister used to go to college. I was in school. And the marriage was taking place in the night outside our room. And suddenly, when the marriage was solemnized, this person came to us and he knocked at the door. And my mother opened the room and the door. And there was this man standing there holding a plate of food in his hands. He was a well-meaning guy. He said, I came to know that you're refugees and you're living in this one-room dwelling. So I just wanted to give this food to you. I think that left my mother, really shocked, and she could not come to terms with the fact that this is what her life had been reduced to, and she started crying. I started to realize after that a particular event, she started, saying this to everyone, whether they cared to listen or not, and this one particular sentence became a part of her identity. And she would say, in Kashmir, our house had 22 rooms. So she would go stand in a line for getting milk, and there would be this person standing in front of her in the line, and she would say, do you know our house in Kashmir had 22 rooms? So many of us in that first summer died in exile, especially because we could not bear that heat. This one person I remember, he was known to our family. He was a retired government officer, and he had to stay in that torn tent in that refugee camp, built on the outskirts of the Jammu city on a land infested with snakes and scorpions. And he was found dead one day with a pack of chilled milk pressed against his right cheek, because he thought that maybe that would provide him some support from the heat. So many people died of sunstroke and these snake and scorpion bites. We became victims of so many illnesses which were not known to us. Post-traumatic stress disorder, diabetes, stress-induced heart disease. Then we realized later that many of the children who had stayed in these refugee camps had got lead poisoning because of the unreliable water supply. In these few months in Kashmir, hundreds of Kashmiri Pandits killed in extremely brutal fashion. And the message was clear, that you kill one person and kill him or her in such a brutal fashion that it drives thousands into exile, and that is exactly what happened. And when we were in Jammu in 1990, we thought that this is going to be very short-lived. Very soon we will be able to go back to our homes. But that weeks stretched into months stretched into years, and by the time we realized it's been already about a quarter of a century. My family, for example, has never been back after the morning of 4th April 1990. That is the day when we left Kashmir Valley. I've been going there regularly since 1998, and for many years I avoided even traveling in the general direction that led to my home. The book, I started thinking about it when I was in college, and I thought that I must write this book. But back then I was very young, and this is 93, 96, just 4 years into exile, and I was very young, and my language was very crude, and I did not know how to write a book. But these images stayed somehow, and I think it's for the first time in 2000 when after I became a journalist, that I decided that I should write this book. But I found this book an extremely difficult book to write because of the personal history involved, especially the images dealing with my mother's illness. She fell ill after we slipped into exile, and in '97 my brother was dragged out of a bus along with his two other Pandit colleagues and shot dead. He was a professor of botany, his name was Ravi. From mid-2000 onwards, what has happened is that I became extremely angry about certain things, about the way the story of Kashmiri Pandits was totally ignored by the media. I come from media, but I've never seen anyone talking about it. Before this book, I wrote this, I've done a lot of work in the Maoist areas, traveling for weeks in the jungles of central and eastern India, and I wrote this book before this book came out, a book called Hello Bastar. So when I wrote this book, I made a lot of friends among the liberal intelligentsia in India. There are these 40-50 people who think that they are running the entire discourse of this country, and they invited me over to coffee, and I was a hero because I talked about the Adivasis, the indigenous tribal people of central and eastern India. And I made a lot of enemies also because of my viewpoint about the Maoists. But somehow it was never fashionable to talk about this story, because this did not fit into the black and white scenario with which the media or many others view this problem as. So here is the one set of people who have been brutalized by the Indian state. But what the media or these policy groups or intelligentsia chooses to forget or ignores even that the same set of people had brutalized another set of people who happened to be Kashmiri Pandits in this case. So a lot of anger, and from 2009 onwards I started writing these passages, and I knew that I had to wade through these patches of darkness, and I finally did. In 2007, while I was researching this book, I thought I should go back to my house where my family lived before 4th April, till 4th April 90, till the morning of 4th April 1990. And I went there for the first time in 2007 and the last time, because I immediately regretted going there. I actually wanted to go there to see what was happening and to click some pictures for my parents who like I said, have never been back. So I'm just going to read another brief passage from a book which deals with the time when I went to my house for the first time in 2007 after 17 years. I'm now standing at one end of my street, my locality. On my left, Rahman the milkman's shop is closed. Is he alive, or has the monster of violence consumed him as well? It is 3 p.m. and there is nobody outside. I walk ahead. Suhail and Zubair follow me. They are two local journalists, Kashmiri Muslims, who are my friends. They've come with me. Mahal, house should be somewhere here. Yes, it is, on my left. I turn, it is in front of me. The huge blue gate is still there. The name Abshar, waterfall, is still painted on a small board. The apple tree used to be visible from the street. Where is it? It's not there. Is this my house? A man walks up to me. Are you looking for someone? He asks. I look at him. I used to live here long ago. I mutter. I look at Zubair and Suhail. They watch this silently as if from the sidelines of a film set. Stop by at my place once you have visited your home, the person says. We enter through the gate of my house. The lawn is just like we had left it, except that the grass is worn away. The small fence still runs around it, but it is broken at many places. The apple tree is no longer there. It was probably cut down. Will you knock at the door? I ask Suhail. 2 gentle knocks. A man appears at the door. Vanu, he says, tell me. I don't know what to say to him. Zubair clears his throat. Actually, he used to live here long ago. He looks at me. The man stares at me. He doesn't know how to process this information. Come inside. He gives up finally. I steal a glance towards the top right-hand side of the door. The fish-shaped doorbell is still there, but it is not functional now. I can see the wire protruding from its belly. I still haven't looked towards my right, towards what used to be our kitchen garden. beyond which used to be Ravi's kitchen garden and then his home. I'm led inside to our living room. An elderly woman, she's the man's wife, is lying on a carpet. She gets up, embarrassed, adjusting her headscarf. She looks at her husband. She's smiling a particular smile, which in Kashmir one does when one cannot ask a question but nevertheless expects an answer. They used to live here, he tells her. Suddenly, I realize Zubair and Suhail are not with me. Where are they? 1 minute, please. I'll just go and see where my friends are, I say as I leave the room. It's probably a good thing to do as it will give them some time to discuss me. I open the front door. I find Zubair and Suhail outside. Suhail's back is towards me, but I understand. He's weeping helplessly at the thought of a man knocking at his own door, finding someone else opening it, and then seeking permission to enter his own house. I hold his hands, we embrace. It takes him a few minutes to compose himself. I lead them inside. We sit on chairs, the woman is looking at me. I don't know why, but I think she's hard of hearing. I just came to take a look. It's been a long time since we lived here. We live in Delhi now. We have our own house, we're settled there. Yes, settled. I just want to click a few pictures and show them to my parents. They haven't been able to return since 1990. Her smile changes. It's a different smile now. It is devoid of that question mark. It's a smile of relief. Yes, don't worry, I know how it feels. The thought of someone coming and claiming your house. It is your house now. I've just come to place it in my memory. Tea arrives, we drink it silently. There are a few questions about what I do and where I live. But my mind is elsewhere. I remember there used to be a cupboard behind where I sit now with glass doors. We used to call it the showpiece almari. It held small decorative items, 6 small clay statues of a military band, photo frames, a dancing girl who gyrated gracefully when nudged, a wire cycle, a big star filled with blue gel. None of it is there now. The house was in a very bad condition, the band says. When we shifted, the walls were crumbling. We had to spend a lot of money on renovation. For years, he lamented over how that wood had been left back home. I step out, I climb down the wooden stairs and hold the baluster for a moment. I want to retain the memory of its feel. I sit on my veranda and tie my shoelaces. The waterworks board stating our connection number is still there, 44732. A piece of driftwood a cousin had lovingly mounted on the wall is there as well. The looters would have thought nothing of it. I shake hands with the man. I look at the spot where the apple tree used to be. I remember how my grandmother used to sit there, or how my grandfather would take me there and try and keep me busy playing with pebbles. There used to be an apple tree there, I point with my finger. Oh, we got it cut. It was occupying too much space. In all these murders, hundreds of murders of Kashmiri Pandits, their properties looted, evicted from their house, the forcefully occupation houses. There's not been a single conviction so far, ladies and gentlemen. Can we run the video, please? I just want to run you through this small 1-minute clipping of this person called Farooq Ahmed, who's a terrorist. He's out, they're free, because the Indian government is not interested in convicting him. He'll tell you how he killed 24 Kashmiri Pandits.
Anjali, could you get the volume up?
I'm sorry, the volume is,
Okay.
I don't have speakers here, but we can run it again. Do you guys want, can you grab the speakers?
Okay, just tell us what it is.
Well, it's about this terrorist who was arrested in June 1990 and spent a few years in jail, and he was released because no one was interested in convicting him. And he essentially says that he has killed about 20 Kashmiri Pandits. He does not remember beyond that. And most of his victims have been Kashmiri Pandits. There are stories about him. The way he used to live in the old part of Srinagar, and he was traveling. He used to travel and suddenly stop in the middle of a street and saying, "Hey, I can smell a Kashmiri Pandit here." And then he would look at his target, just whip out his pistol, and kill that person. And back then, there was this euphoria, where you would not even cover your face or something. It was just a blatant, cold-blooded murder on the streets of Kashmir. And this person today is a free man. He's married. He is a father. For all you know, he might claim to be a Gandhian tomorrow and say that I'm interested in politics. He might fight elections tomorrow from Jammu and Kashmir. So this is the kind of people we're dealing with. 23 years, and the small community of about 350,000 people, 400,000 people, into exile, permanent exile, and spread out everywhere from Jammu and Kashmir to Johannesburg. By the virtue of our education, we are almost 100% literate community. Wherever we go, we do well for ourselves. We work hard and make sure that our children go to study. We may live under a tin shed, but we make sure that our children have books. So we are spread everywhere. But like Edward Said said, he said, exile brings with it an insurmountable amount of sadness. And I think that sadness, when we sit back, when we're not talking to people, when we're not having a gathering, when we're not having a drink, when we're not having a cup of tea, when we're not celebrating any festival, the mind always returns to home, and that thought always brings back that insurmountable amount of sadness. Thank you.